What do young men need to find purpose in today's world? Today, I have Josh Hatcher on from manlyhood.com to discuss that question in particular. How can young men find purpose in a world that seems very hostile to men and to masculinity and to the virtue, manliness, and what go along with it, to courage and boldness and all of those things. They want us to be timid, and all of these sort of effeminate or feminine virtues. I guess I should say feminine virtues and effeminate ways of being. And Josh Hatcher does a great job of coaching men on how to really lean into who we are as men and not do it in a destructive or kind of annoying or toxic masculine way, as the culture is very apt to call it, but really talk about it in a way that you are training men to be good men. And that's what he does. And honestly, is a great man himself and a good husband and father. And so it's good to discuss that. We also dive into, reminding men that they are not only relevant but needed, in our culture. That's a huge thing that's missing out of so many people and in so many people's lives today is good men and good manly role models. And we discuss a lot as well on the culture and how it's influencing the way we look at these problems and a lot of the issues that are confronting us today. And then lastly, we dive into his book, Reignite, which you can find on manlyhood.com/reignite. And we dive into a little bit about what he talks about there. So lots of great stuff in this episode, and I really think there's a lot to be learned from Josh and what he's doing at manlyhood.com. So definitely dive in and check it out. But before I hop over to the interview, I just want to remind you to go to conversationforougeneration.com/subscribe to get access for just $5 a month to the courses that I'm rolling out, to other premium content, the Discord community, and a copy of my book sent to you as well. So definitely do that for $5 a month. It supports my work and gets those, and you get those perks and benefits as well. And then also you can make sure you subscribe to the podcast, to YouTube, wherever you're watching or listening to this, and leave a good rating and review or comment on YouTube. That's a 10-second way that's super free and easy to support the work that I'm doing and help the algorithms know to boost my podcast and get this in front of more people. If you're enjoying this, if you think this is good stuff, take the few seconds that it takes to just leave a good rating and review. And I really appreciate that for everyone who's doing that out there. So thank you for that. Seen some rolling in, so thank you. And lastly, if you are interested in getting my email newsletter on Fridays, some of my thoughts and things that I'm thinking about and listening to, watching, reading, etc., it's just my weekly top discussions. Just sign up at conversationfourgeneration.com/newsletter. And that's it for my announcements. Let's hop on over to my interview with Josh. And so today I'm joined by Josh Hatcher from manlyhood.com. Thanks, Josh, for joining me today on the Conversation for Our Generation.
Awesome. I'm really glad to be here. Excited to talk with you and kind of get to see what you're doing. And it's been kind of neat following you and your conversations that you've been having. It's neat stuff. So kind of honored to be a part of it.
Thanks. I appreciate it. And yeah, I came across your work on the Vital Masculinity podcast when they talked to you a while back. And I know we've had some scheduling things trying to get this to happen with families and everything. I totally understand, but I'm excited to be able to talk to you. And for those who aren't familiar with you and what you're doing, why don't you just give them a brief overview of who you are and what you're up to at manlyhood.com?
Yeah. So Manlyhood started, I'm going to say probably about 8 years ago this spring. And it was, it might have been 9 years ago, to be honest with you. I think I lost a year in there with COVID. I think just everybody lost a year with COVID. It's like the other day I was thinking, man, this has been a long winter. And then I realized there's been 2 winters and there was like a whole year in the middle. There was like a spring and a summer. I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot about those.
Exactly.
But I think it's been 8 or 9 years since I started Manlyhood. I guess I'm going to have to get online and look that up again. But it really started for me. I was a youth leader for a long time in an alliance church, a Christian missionary and alliance church, and then I did it in a Free Methodist church for a long time. And throughout that process, I was introduced to like Promise Keepers and there's lots of there's no shortage of Christian evangelical programs for men out there, although now they're starting to dry up. So there's not a whole lot of that now. But at that time, back in the late 90s, at the turn of the century, which makes me sound so old. At the turn of the century, there was all kinds of stuff for men, and there was a big kind of resurgence in the concept that, hey, we need to really establish what it means to be a man, especially a Christian man. And so for me, that was embedded in my heart early on. But I'm also the kind of guy that, for whatever reason, I have a lot of relationships with a lot of people that don't identify as Christian, and I still think that those conversations are valid. I think that we can have those conversations about masculinity, about manhood, about being a good father, being a good husband, and being a leader in your community, and all the things that I was hearing about in Promise Keepers and all these other places. But there are other men that need to hear them too. And I have found that when you can have those conversations and you can invite Christian men and non-Christian men to those conversations, we all kind of benefit.
Mm-hmm.
We all kind of benefit from having those conversations in that place. So that's kind of where Manlyhood was born. And it started as a blog because, I have a background in graphic design and web design, and I'm a writer. Those are the things I like to do. And so it just kind of started. I didn't know exactly where it was going to be. And it it's kind of grown and built from there. And, we've done some men's events over the years. Again, COVID threw us for a loop, which kind of took some fun out of it, I think, but hoping we can get that stuff started back up again. And there's been some really neat encounters when you get some guys around a campfire, or, you get some guys doing some ridiculous wild prank that they've got to do to earn points for their team. I one of the events that we did with this crazy like marathon of stunts that they had to do, and these teams get this card, and I'm looking at this card and I'm thinking, man, I should have thought this out better. The team is going to get so many points if for every member of their team that can do 10 push-ups. And I look and I realize like half of these guys are over 60, and several of them are almost in their 70s. And I look, and the old guys are the first ones on the ground doing push-ups, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to kill them. They're going to die here in this camp in the woods, and it's going to be all my fault. But I know that's kind of all over the place. But I just say that to say that I think that there's just something happens awesome when you get men together and you spend time together and you have fun. I've always wanted Manlyhood to not just be a blog on the internet where I rant and rave and complain about stuff, and it's kind of cool to see things happen in real life too. So that's been kind of fun.
Yep. That's definitely something that for me this year, as things clear up, I want to try to do is figure out how to actually get people together physically if possible, and find a way to do some programming and conversations, because I think that really helps. And I found that for me, I'm actually about to turn 26. And so coming up, I feel like all the programs that we had were not geared towards what boys wanted to do. Everything that we seemed to have, it was like, if a boy did it, it was just kind of because it was gender neutral almost. It wasn't for boys or girls, but even Scouts was just kind of neutered in a way before they made it to just the Scouts and not the Boy Scouts anymore. I think that it's good to address and do events that are for men in a way that appeals to men, particularly because we are different than women, as much as our culture would like to say that that's not the case. I think that that's definitely a good idea, to find a way to bring men together in a way that appeals to men and not just kind of the general public, or this sort of feminized version of what we think a man should want.
Yeah, and to say that we're different is not wrong. It's not bad. I think our culture is trying to hammer this idea that it's wrong to say that men and women are different, and it's not. It's right to say that we're different and that we have different needs. I mean, that's right. That's good. And I'm going to tell you what, I've been in a lot of like small group settings, whether they're Bible studies or even just guys getting together and hanging out. And I'm going to tell you, if a guy's got a struggle or an issue in his life, he's not going to open up and share it in front of a mixed group of people. Or if he does, it completely changes that conversation and that relationship. And I know that, I had a group of guys where we met every week and we went through the book, um, Mansfield's Book of Manly Men. I don't know
Mhm.
if you're familiar with Stephen Mansfield, but it's an
Mhm.
amazing book. You need to check it out. So we met all winter long, like every Wednesday night at a tattoo parlor, and it was awesome.
That's
And
awesome.
we met at this tattoo parlor and just went through the book. And I swear, we probably only four of us even read the chapters. The rest of us just sat there and talked and ate pizza and goofed off. And we're sitting there, and all of a sudden we hear this fire alarm in the door at the Chinese restaurant next door. So one of our guys leaves and goes over and helps them sort it out because they couldn't get it turned off. And she comes back with a big plate of Chinese food for us. And and one of the guys gets a tattoo and his tongue pierced in the middle of our group. And but just that camaraderie, and in the middle of that, these guys opened up and were real and shared about some real struggles that they were having.
Mhm.
And whether it was financial trouble or issues in their marriage, or struggles with looking at porn on the internet, or even some deeper stuff that I don't even feel comfortable talking about, mistakes from their past they made, and they're trying to be a new person and don't want to go down that route anymore.
Mhm.
And in the process of that, it's a safe place. And I know we hate talking about that, right? Because we're like manly men and we like to make
Mhm.
fun of people for having safe space, right? You don't need safe space. Yeah, we do. Everybody needs safe space. It's just the honest truth. And we need to stop making it feel like, like it's a pansy thing. To need a safe place that you can talk about stuff. It's just honestly true. We do need that. And, you know, you got to have those kinds of relationships where you can feel safe enough to share your darkness with some brothers who are willing to fight it out for you.
Mhm. Yep. Yeah, I worked retreats for my high school all the way like as a senior, and then even in college I would go back and work them. And I found that there's a big difference when I would work like the junior men's overnight where it was just all guys versus our senior retreats are sort of guys and girls. And despite that, senior retreat they would be able to share and people could open up because you kind of work all week on bringing people into it. But the energy was definitely very different. And even on the junior men's overnights, you kind of get guys into it very quickly because they're there with their bros. And it's also very different, I assume, from the like I would talk to the girls who would work the like junior women's overnight, and they're like, yeah, we sat and we had some snacks and talked. And I'm like, really? Because I'm pretty sure like the guys that I was watching were sneaking out and playing like tackle football outside and yelling. And it's like this was very different. Like when you separate them out, you can definitely see the differences and how
Or they
men
were
get.
flirting with the girls the whole time. I mean,
Yeah,
that was
well, there
me.
weren't any girls on the
Who
junior
needs
ends.
who needs tackle football when
Yeah,
there's girls in the room? I mean, that was
exactly.
me when I was in junior high and,
Yeah,
and, and high school.
yeah,
Um, and and
yeah.
honestly, the same is true. If you talk about that with our youth and our young people, we desperately need that safety. And you know what? And I think we also need some mixed gender spaces too, because
Mhm.
it is important for men to learn, young men, how to learn how to treat ladies. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
how to behave in those kinds of settings. But manhood is like COVID. You know, you don't just get it automatically. You catch it from being around other people who have it.
Hmm.
You get infected with it, and only COVID's bad, and
Yeah,
and manhood is good.
yes.
So you want to get infected with it, and you get it by being around it and by learning from others. So
Mhm.
you know, I think that's why it's important.
Yep. I agree 100%. And I think that kind of takes us into, of our first topic of kind of a man understanding his purpose, because I think that one thing that you have to recognize as a man is you have to find your purpose. So how do you go about doing that? But who do you look to? Because I think that that's the big question right now is it seems like our culture holds up very bad images of what a man is in every aspect. So you look up to the rappers and the people who are talking about the wrong types of things in high school, I think a lot of the time. So how does a young man, my age or younger, go about finding purpose, and who are some of the people that you should look to if you don't, and especially if you don't have those role models in your life, like some people are lucky to have.
I think it starts with you first understanding and identifying your purpose. I think that um, like the who you look to is the next question. It's like a later part of the question. And yes, they kind of go hand in hand, because you do have to learn from others and you have to kind of see what you want to be,
Mm-hmm.
but your purpose is really it's very closely tied with your identity, with who you are, but it's why you exist. Why are you on this planet? And it is a question that has plagued the universe forever. And I think anybody who would identify as a Christian, I think, should have a clearer answer to that question than
Mm-hmm.
someone who might not identify as a Christian. I think that those answers should come a little bit clearer for those who have that. I think religion exists to answer some of those questions. I think that's why we ask those questions. I think that's why we're driven to the spiritual, because we know that we're made for more. I mean, even, Carl Sagan, who was an avowed atheist, almost agnostic, but mostly atheist,
Mm-hmm.
who worshiped at the altar of science, talked about the cosmos almost in deified tones, because
Mm-hmm.
and talked about that quest for purpose that we all have. I mean, he answers it differently than we do, but it reflects what's in all of us, is that we all want to have a purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, taking the time to identify it is important, and understanding what it means, because a lot of times I'll talk with a lot of guys working through this. And we'll talk about your purpose, what is it? And we'll start working through that, and they'll say, well, they'll do this backwards. They'll start saying, well, what I love to do, or what I want to do, and they'll make that a matter of identity. So let's say that you're a really good runner and you love to run, and then you make your purpose, I want to be the world's fastest runner. That's my purpose. I'm going to be the best runner. And then you're in a horrific accident and your leg is cut off. Now you have no purpose, right? Your purpose is gone. And it's important to understand that your purpose is, the reason that you exist is like eternal. It's always been like, it was there before you were here, and it's there after. It's the reason why. It's not the new reason why. It's the reason why. And you may get it and you might not always get it, and that's okay. But as you define it for yourself, it's okay to think in broad terms. Honestly, when you write out your purpose, it's actually less fulfilling than you would think, because it is kind of broad. It's kind of general. It's almost generic, because if you get too specific with your purpose itself, and that's where I differentiate. PMVV is what I like to call the whole process, because you have your purpose, your mission, your vision, and your values. And I think differentiating between those things really matters a lot. So your purpose, I know with me, my purpose has to do with loving God, loving my family, loving my community, and that's the thing. Like, even if my family all dies, I still have family. I'm always going to have family. And if I have no physical blood relatives, I'll have somebody that's going to be my family. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
That's a purpose you can't take away from me. Nothing can take that away from you. So you have to think of that as you start identifying your purpose. What is the most important thing about you, and why do you exist? And I think that if you can identify that, then you can really get into the heart of what your mission is. And we may have different missions at different times in our life. At some point in your life, your mission may be be the best blues musician on the planet, until a better blues musician comes along, and then it might be to be something different. Like, you can have a different mission and it can change over time, but your purpose never really changes.
Yeah,
And
and it's almost like, as you're coming of age, when you're in high school, it's to prepare to be a man. And when you go through school or whatever you do, get into your early career, it's to sort of find that, prepare yourself to provide for a family and to take that on, or, go the religious route. As a Catholic, obviously, we don't have, well, Latin Rite Catholic, we don't have married clergy. So you have to choose between the vocation of marriage or the vocation of the priesthood. But you're supposed to choose one of those two and pursue it. And that becomes your mission at that point. And so you're kind of always preparing for that next fuller step as well. It seems like that really opens you up. When you didn't get into the college you want, it just seems crushing, but you then realize, hey, it led me to this place where now I went to the right school and I met the girl that I was supposed to marry because of this thing that maybe, I thought was my purpose at the time, but really was just, a stepping stone on the way to opening it up even more.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's where kind of that other part of your question comes in too, when you talk about who do we look to, because that's where, okay, I really have some questions here. And so then you find guys in your life that you can look up to, that, and they may be older. I mean, I love to say I always need old guys in my life, and all the young guys are like, "What are you talking about? You are old," because you know I'm, I'm I'm almost 43, and so they think that I'm old, and I'm like, no, I mean, I need like some 70 and 80-year-olds in my life, because
Yeah.
you need that. You need somebody
Yeah.
in your life that has been through some crap and can tell you, like, hey man.
Hmm.
And but at the same time, you need peers too. We need all of it,
Hmm.
I but but you need people in your life who can tell you, hey man, is this where you're headed? People you can look up to, people that can challenge you, people that can hold you accountable to your values.
Hmm.
And I think that helps you shape and understand it.
Hmm.
um I think that if you can get that nice broad purpose figured out early, then your next mission, because that's the thing, you're going to have mission all the time. Your next mission makes more sense.
Hmm. Yep. I know that for me, I think pretty early on, I knew what my purpose was. My mom would always, like, every night, she'd pray over me and my brothers and just pray that we grow up to be good men who love God and love our families. And I think that that was always something that struck me. It's like, okay, if I, one of my purposes
How
is
dare
to,
she?
yeah. And so,
How
like,
dare she?
yeah, exactly. But it's like one of my purposes in life is obviously to make my parents happy. I know that that's the case. And so I knew how to do that from a very early age. And I think that that's something that stuck with me, even when probably in high school years and college years, I wasn't as focused on the things that would, lead to that. I think there was always something at me kind of tugging me back because of it. And so knowing, I think, the purpose from an early age, and hopefully your parents are teaching you this early on, because they're the first ones I think that for me did a great job of setting the expectation of what life should hold for me and being very good about giving direction as to how to get there, but not being overbearing either. They weren't, laissez-faire parents, and they weren't your helicopter parents either. They were, I think, a pretty good medium. And they may have their excesses at times, going either way, but I think they did a pretty good job overall on that. And I think that that's one place where it really starts is, for men who are listening who are parents, or young men who are in their high school, college years and aren't listening to your parents. I think that's a good place to look first, especially if they are someone who you would want to emulate, if you think that's a good life to live.
So my children, I have one left at home. We had four kids. Actually, on our 1 year wedding anniversary on the 4th of July, we had twins. And then we had another one after that, and then another one. So we have two girls and two boys. And my uh, the son and daughter that were the twins both got married the same year, and then one of them is going to have a baby now, and the other one probably won't be too far behind, I can imagine. But
Yeah.
it is it's honestly the joy of my life to see all of my kids trying to live up to those standards that we set for them.
Hmm.
But I have to also understand and know that they're also going to have to figure it out for themselves and make their own mistakes and figure out their own way. Sometimes that's easier than other times. Sometimes you're like, man, what's wrong with you, kid? Why can't you just figure this out? I told you, I invested so much in you. And so I'm learning, how to let go and let them figure it out. And it's always a challenge, but um
Yeah.
um, but if we look at our culture and what's going on with our culture right now, I mean, it's a mess. And when I boy, there's so much to unpack just in that statement. But people all the time will come up to me, what are we going to do about all this stuff? We've got Satan everywhere, and we've got all this evil everywhere, and all these people doing all this wrong. And we do, and it's horrible. It's evil, really. Honestly, there's evil all around us. And I think that we misunderstand that the solution to it is there are things. I'm not saying we should be passive about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we should have been active about it like 50 years ago or 70
I'd say
years
even
ago.
150. Yeah.
Yeah, like we let this happen. Like maybe it wasn't us, but generations is how we got here. Generations of passivity, and I probably shouldn't say something, or people being hypocrites and saying one thing, doing another. So here we are, and this is what we have. We have a culture that has abandoned any sense of morality, any sense of decency. And we can say that honestly, like atheists will agree with me on that. Like the secular world will agree with me on that. Like, what are we doing here? It's falling apart. And anybody that doesn't agree with that is somebody who is really just trying to convince themselves that it's good. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they know it's messed up and they're just trying to convince themselves it's good. But
Yep.
what people don't understand is that if you want to fix this, it starts in your home. It starts with your family. It starts with your eyes and what you allow in your head and what you allow in through your eyes and in through your ears and what you allow to take up residency in your mind. And then what you allow through your pipes and door into your house, and then in turn into your family's mind.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes guts to say, no, you know what? That cartoon that you're watching is disrespectful to its parents. Those kids on that cartoon are super disrespectful. We're turning it off because that's not how a child should behave.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's not how a kid should behave for their dad or their mom. And you're not going to talk to your dad or your mom that way. And you've been watching the show and you're starting to act like that. So you're not watching that show anymore.
Yep.
Dad, I hate you. Good. Don't watch it anymore.
Yeah.
Like start at home. We don't, we just assume that they're just going to behave themselves. And listen, I don't care how much you think you've got it under control. You don't. They're still going to find ways around it. And they're still going to do the wrong thing. But you've got to start at home in developing your children to do the right thing and to know the right thing. They're going to make mistakes. Your teenage boy is going to find a way to access porn probably. You know what I mean?
Definitely.
Your daughter might as well, believe it or not. Your daughter probably will too. I think people forget that is a struggle for girls.
Mm-hmm.
Like you might be like, well, no devices. Well, guess what? They're going to find it somewhere, somehow.
Yeah.
We didn't have devices when I was a kid and I found it,
Yeah, exactly.
They didn't have the internet then.
Like, you knew a friend who knew where his dad's Playboys were or something, you know how to find things.
Or you knew how to turn to page 43 of the Sears catalog and look at and imagine that the girl in her bra was in less than her bra. I mean, like you get what you can get. Or you turn to channel 50 and you watch the scrambled TV feed and maybe you catch a glimpse of something,
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't it's worse today, obviously, because I think it's more graphic, it's more harmful.
And it's more accessible too, because 9-year-olds have a smartphone that doesn't have any parental controls on it half the time.
Yeah,
and
I'm telling you, right now, if you've got kids at home and if you have convinced yourself that they have to have these devices, then you need to pay whatever money you need to pay to get filtering. I hate that filtering costs money.
Mm-hmm.
Like I get it. I get somebody invented the filter, so they have to get paid for it. But like I wish that there was somebody who said, look, this is an evil upon society. I'm willing to donate to develop this. That would be really nice, but we don't have that yet. Yep. But if you're looking for a good app, by the way, there's a great app called Bark that monitors social media. There's another app called Covenant Eyes.
Yep, I'm actually an affiliate for Covenant Eyes.
Great. So they can look at your setup and they can get it through you and, monitor what your family is watching. And instead of viewing it like, you do have to view it like you're trying to do everything you can to shut off the pipe so that it's not getting into your house. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But at the same time, you have to view it also as, okay, be realistic. They're going to look at it. They're going to have access to it. So how do we deal with that from there? Mm-hmm. Like, they're not evil. They're not raw. They're not horrible people. They're human and they did something wrong. Make sure they know they can come and talk to you about it and work through it graciously so that they can learn how to overcome it. Mm-hmm. I think most men, and many men that may even be listening to, are probably just doing it on their own anyway and just lying about it. So they're like, whatever, it's just normal, it's natural, or they're just not even willing to have the conversation, or
Yeah.
they can like I know there've been times in my life when I have done really bad things or wrong things, and even just shut off and convinced myself that I didn't do them,
Hmm.
you know? Like blocked it out of my memory completely. Just shut it off. Like, no, that's not me. It's not me. It's not me anymore. I asked God for forgiveness and it was forgiven and I moved forward, but I didn't necessarily make it right, didn't make amends, didn't work through that process of
Hmm.
doing the right thing. And so then it's still hanging out there, but I don't think about it.
Hmm.
Dude, every time it will come back to bite you. It will always come back to get you.
Yep.
Always, 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 always. You cannot. Have you ever seen the movie The Patriot? That line at the beginning, like, I've always feared that my sins would come to find me out. They always will. They
Yeah.
always will. Hopefully they don't come at you like a hatchet, like a bloody hatchet through the woods like that, in The Patriot. But
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, hopefully not. But no, I do agree that that's one thing for me. It's like control what you can control and prepare your children to confront the world outside. There's a book that I've heard on Catholic Answers talked about that it's literally made for like 6, 7, 8 year olds to explain to them what to do when they come across nudity, because we have to do that now. Because an 8 year old could probably see more naked people in an evening than the average person 100, 200 years ago would see in their lifetime.
yeah,
And so you have to, I mean, that's insane that that's a possibility. And so it explains like, okay, you close, I forget exactly what their acronym, but they have an acronym. It's like, you close it or put it away, you forget it, and then you come talk to me, basically is like what it is. It's, and it's, so it's, I forget what the book is called. Maybe if I can remember it, I'll find it. I'm afraid to search for the book also without knowing the title. Because you never know what you're going to come across. And when you're
yeah, yeah,
child's book about porn, that'll be like, well, oh, hey, did not know that they're promoting it this way, knowing
yeah,
what we have going on potentially. So,
yeah. You got
uh,
to find the right keywords first. Well, and unfortunately, even specific keywords might not be helpful in that situation. But yeah, no, it's crazy. That's not like the even just that issue is just one issue. I mean, uh, as a father, and we're talking about it, but like there's this concept and this idea, and I know that you're coming from a Catholic tradition. I'm coming
mhm,
more from an evangelical tradition. But we've talked sometimes about this concept of generational sin. I don't know if you guys ever talk about that much, but this idea that the sins of the father are passed down, and um, I mean, I don't believe that my children will be held responsible for my sin.
mhm,
You know what I mean? But I
yeah,
do believe that they'll have to face them.
mhm,
And it's funny because if I look back at the mistakes that I've made and I see the mistakes that my kids made, if I look back, I know that my dad or my mom made those same mistakes, and I know that their dad and mom made those same mistakes. Like I can trace stuff back. Actually, when my son turned 18, I took him on this scavenger hunt, like all over. Um, and he had to kind of find stuff. And dude, it was crazy. I like made it like Illuminati themed, and like he was like trying to defeat the Illuminati. It was like so much fun, and like took him to every cemetery in town, and actually found my great 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 grandfather's grave and left a clue there. And at that grave, I actually wrote like a little book for him,
mhm,
called "The Darkness in Your Blood," where I just like laid out all of the family's sins.
hmm,
And
interesting.
I'm like, I want you to know this. Like you're entering into manhood, and these mistakes are mistakes that you are going to have to face. You
Mhm,
have to break these chains for yourself,
mhm,
because unfortunately we have had to break them, and now it's your turn.
yeah,
And if you break them, then instead of falling into them, then maybe your kids might not have to go through that same thing.
mhm,
But I don't know, just something I think about a lot is, I hate the idea that my kids have to face things like that I've screwed up, but I think there's something to it.
mhm. I do too. I mean, and I don't know if we talk about the generational idea, but we do talk about temporal punishment do for sin, right? That there are effects to when you sin that affects the world in a way that, you know, puts out, I don't want to say puts out negativity. It sounds very new agey, but I can't think of a better phrase, that you
Nope.
transgress against the natural order and that has consequences. Just
Yeah.
as if if you did something physical,
Reap
like,
what you sow.
yeah, exactly. And so, I could see, I mean, if in an obvious case of that is, a man who has a kid and goes to prison for 10 years, you are paying your price, but your children are paying a serious price for that. And I think that, the sins that you might have that you carry as a father or a grandfather, that maybe, I think they can find a way to mess with your psyche and influence the way you treat other people. I think that that's definitely the case. I mean, I think that we're going to see, I mean, we just saw what happened, this is a bit topical, but what happened with that guy who went and shot up the massage parlors. There's obviously something that was wrong and dissociative in his sex addiction, his porn use, and everything that was going on that allowed him to dissociate from the act that he was doing there and kill those people and blame them for the things that he did. And
I'm,
and so I
I'm so amazed, by the way, when we hear these stories like that, by the way, how often like there becomes a cultural narrative, right, that gets shoved and pushed at everybody that we all need to accept. It always comes back down to this concept of so and so has power and that's the problem and we need to take the power away from them. But really, like, the people that do those things, it's like always psychosis. Like, normal healthy people don't shoot up a massage parlor. like like they don't. Like, normal healthy people don't walk into a grocery store and shoot people.
Mhm.
Like, none of them do ever. Like, they never will.
And these people almost always have a history of mental illness and
Or drug
have been
abuse
flagged,
or
and quite
something.
often have been flagged multiple times, and people don't do anything about it. I don't
Yeah.
want red flag laws, but I don't think that, it's not that the guns are the issue here. It's the fact that we have people who are repeatedly acting violently because of some sort of mental issue, and we don't do anything about that. We don't force them into treatment in some way. I mean, I think that that's an obvious case where if someone's mentally sound and is harming people, we take them out of society and put them in a prison. If someone is mentally unsound and that's the cause of it, you should be able to pull them away from society and help them heal, because they're not really culpable in some respect for actions as fully culpable. They are in some ways. It depends. But, it depends on the level of mental acuity and everything. But you do have to address that as an issue before it escalates to these more horrific events. If they're killing animals or lashing out at kids in school and all of these sorts of things, those are signs that there's something wrong that we should address. And we don't
Yeah.
have to wait till they pick up a gun and run into a store or massage parlors until we address it. I think we could catch these things before then.
Statistically, also, you know, the other thing I think that's lacking and missing that we don't talk about is um, the fatherhood situation in a lot of these, not all of them, but a
Mhm.
lot of these situations. There are dads that are either absent or disconnected or ill on their own.
Mhm.
The number of these guys that do this father at home or never had a father at home, it's high.
Yeah.
And I think that's a lot of it. And I'm not saying that guys that don't have a father are all going to turn out like that. What I'm saying is, men, be a father to your children. If
Yeah.
something happens and you are separated from their mother, and I understand that there are a million reasons why that can happen, do whatever you have to do to be a father to that child. And you be involved and you teach that child right from wrong. And you teach that child, hey, guess what? This is a gun. And you never point a gun at something unless you want to kill it.
Yep.
I mean, like, that's, people
Even
don't
if you know it's not
understand.
loaded,
Yeah,
you know.
people don't understand that that's how we learn to use firearms, is from a father. I was like, I'm still like, my dad has been passed away. He's been gone for 2 years, and I can still hear his voice in my head every time I pick up a loaded weapon, you know, reminding me how to handle it and what to do with it, because he drilled it into me, like, this is how you handle this, because
Mhm.
this is what a man does. He makes sure that he doesn't accidentally do this, or he doesn't do this the wrong way.
Hmm.
The problem, I I think, we want to blame masculinity for the problems we have, but honestly, what we need is more. This guy who went into the massage parlor, seems to me he didn't have a good father figure teaching him how to properly value women. Do you know what I
Hmm.
mean?
Yeah.
Like seems to me like a father who is showing real love and affection for his mother in front of him would teach him that.
Hmm.
And yes, I know that, again, not everybody has a father. I mean, the divorce rates are staggering, and there's a lot of people who grow up without that. And so if there's boys in your neighborhood, invite them into your home,
Hmm.
and show them and model for them what it means to be a good man.
Yep. It reminds me of the time where I forget where it was, but somewhere in Africa they had a reserve where they had a bunch of teenage bull elephants that were just running rampant, and they couldn't figure out why these things were doing it. But what they had done is they had put them in there to breed, and so they kind of pulled them away as young ones or pulled the men out, some one of the two. And the only thing they had to do was just put like two or like one or two adult like old male elephants in that reserve, and immediately those adult elephants checked their behavior and got them in line, and they stopped terrorizing all they were just tearing down shit and just messing stuff up. And it's like, well, yeah, like if you look at an underpass and or whatever, you can see boys are boys and they're going to do vandalistic things if they're not unchecked. Because I think that it's not that we need just more masculinity in general. I do think we need that, but I think that we need to have a masculinity that is bridled and ordered towards what is right, just, and good. And we need, because right now, whatever masculinity we have is towards, ambition. Like there's a lot that's towards I'm going to be super successful. I see that all the time. We have people, the next Jeff Bezos, the next that. That is a masculine thing in a way to want
Mhm.
that, to have that ambition. But we need to have that bridled in a way that's ordered towards what is right and what is good.
Yeah, I that's one of the things I really like about Stephen Mansfield, who um, talks in that kind of leadership language where he's talking a lot about success and things like that, but he also um, focuses on the concept of noble masculinity,
Mm.
and like, as opposed to toxic masculinity. And I really honestly, like, I think that that's what we're lacking. So when I read a story in the news about some guy that, dude, I just read one the other day where there's a guy that, you know, his baby was found like almost fatally injured, you know, like here in my hometown. And actually, know the mother, and my heart's breaking for this situation, knowing what they're going through. And, you know, that is not masculine behavior.
Mhm.
It's he's a male, but
Mhm.
a man doesn't do that.
Mhm.
I mean, how many times have we heard that? Like, a real man doesn't, you know, injure an infant,
Yeah.
or a real man doesn't beat a woman. Like I think that masculinity by its nature has a certain degree of virtue to it, or should have that.
Mhm.
So yes, I agree with what you're saying. I just think that should be assumed about manhood and masculinity, because
Yeah.
if it's not, then what it is just overgrown boyhood uh without any virtue
Mhm.
woven into it.
Mhm. Mhm. I think that makes a lot of sense. And so we've kind of discussed a few of the problems with our culture, but w- why do we? I mean, and we've kind of touched on this, but why do we need men in our society in general? But in the family, all the way up. Why? Why do you think our culture needs more men and more masculine men?
Well, I think that, like I said, that heart of it is that manhood and masculinity have virtue. They have right and wrong in them. There's leadership in them. And yes, I'm not saying that women can't lead. I mean, I talk about this all the time. Like, matriarchy and patriarchy coexist. Like,
Mhm.
my wife is a leader in our home, and I'm a leader in my home, and we both lead. I do
Mhm.
believe that there's, from a Christian perspective, I think that there's some authority, some special authority that a man has, but authority and leadership mean service. not
Hmm.
lordship.
Yeah,
You know what I
that's
mean?
yeah.
And people don't get that, but we both lead, and we both lead together, and we lead equally. Does it mean that there is a higher degree of responsibility on me as the man? Yes. That's what people get wrong. And I think what happened is somewhere along the line, men started to think that it meant, well, I'm the king of my castle. No, actually, here's the thing that I think that we misunderstood what that meant. I think um I think we're supposed to be the knights of our of our castle. I think we're supposed to be the priests of our castle.
Hmm.
And I think that that's what our role is. You know, we live in submission to the king, you know, to the sovereign, and um then we lead from that position and that perspective. And I think that if we're trying to lead in a position where we're our kings, then we're leading in a position where we're entitled. And
Yeah.
that is not manly. It is not manly to be entitled. And I think that so that has happened for generations. And now here we are, we're finally starting to understand, okay, I don't deserve this because I'm a man. You know, I have to lead, and lead means to serve.
Hmm.
And when we do that, then we start to make a difference in the culture. So
Hmm.
but what's happened is men have over the years set a poor example of this. You know, there have been good examples, and probably more good examples than bad examples, but right now the cultural narrative is that men have been bad at it,
Yep.
you know.
And all the good examples are quiet examples of your dad who, prayed over you at night, who taught you right from wrong, who taught you how to eat. That guy, all the dads that are like that out there, are not the ones who are being held up as the big leaders, your presidents, your whatever, your military leaders, all of those people. It, it's those small actions. I think that, like you talked about, it starting in the home. We don't see those as a culture. We see the rap. We see we
Yeah,
see the
the
celebrities, and the
generous
celebrities are bad. The celebrities are very bad examples of this.
yeah. And um you know, and we make a mistake when we start to follow celebrities. You know, it's funny because like you and I are both working on building a brand, right, and becoming an influencer, so to speak. You know, as we're working on getting, you know, our name out there. And it's funny because it's like I fight that tooth and nail. Like I want to be able to get the word out about what I'm doing and tell people what I'm doing. Like I would love it if Josh Hatcher was a name that people knew, represented the things that I represent. You know, that would be awesome. But
Mhm.
doggone it, I don't want to be, you know, because if you start looking at my life and if you start asking people questions, they're going to be like, Josh Hatcher. In fact, there's a news blog in my hometown. Um, it's like years ago, I was a journalist, and I actually started a news blog when I worked at a radio station. I was writing the news, and I realized, oh, I'm going to start writing the news online and just sharing it on there. And in the process, I kind of developed a following. And over time, I just quit doing it. And then someone else from my hometown stepped in and started doing it. So, you know, it's basically, and he started making money doing it. I was doing it for the fun of it. He's making money, you know, selling advertisement, and great, awesome, good for him. So he recently shared one of my videos, and um, you know, he's awesome because he gets what I'm doing, you know. And so he shared one of my Manhood videos on his page, and he turned off the comments. The comment section on his blog is the worst. You know, people will just eat each other alive.
Yeah.
I turned off the comments on his blog, but when it got shared on Facebook, people were commenting. And it's funny because somebody went and actually blocked my account. Somebody I don't even know this person, right? So and you have to also understand I live in the middle of nowhere. Like I don't know if you can see the hills behind me, but like if you look at Pennsylvania and you look like at the green part, like just south of Erie, like
Mhm.
like 3 hours from Erie, it's green. I'm like right in the middle of that. Like there's nothing else.
Yeah.
So like, we're talking small town drama here, you know. So this guy that I don't know, but who knows who I am and knows what I stand for, blocks me, and then starts leaving comments talking trash about me, you know, because I was giving advice and help and talking about like addiction and suicide and things like that without being a certified counselor. And how dare I minimize but he said something like, Josh used to be a great guy, but he's really gone off the rails. And, you know, it's funny because like I would never run for public office because, you know, people around here people everywhere right now, like they just eat you alive. They look for any chink in your armor. And I've got enough chinks in my armor. You know, I've said enough stupid stupid things to people over the years. I could probably even say that different. I could say I've said enough stupid things to stupid people over the years that I've caused damage, and you know, and I've made my own mistakes, man. And you know, like I don't think that disqualifies me from having a voice, you know, but I do know that what it should do is it should not, if people's expectation is for me to be worshipable like it is of celebrities, you know, like, yeah, this celebrity culture thing is a mess. Like we have to stop elevating anybody to that level. We do the same thing in our churches too. I think we see it in the Catholic Church as well. I know we see it in evangelical churches where we elevate a priest or a pope or a pastor or whoever to or a worship leader to some position of respect and authority, completely forgetting that they're a human. And then when they say something stupid or they do something stupid, we're surprised, and then our faith is crushed and we walk away from it, you know, as though our faith ever should depend on a man, you know. And we also then create a toxic culture for them because like I think of you know, there was a celebrity pastor recently who it came out that he'd had an affair, and everybody was all up in arms about it. And I mean, he was repentant. He's like, look, I made a mistake, I shouldn't have done this, you know, and I'm pulling out of the ministry, which is the right response. But you know, affairs don't start with an affair. You know, like that started way back with a thought in his mind. And that guy needed to be able to talk to somebody.
But you can't.
But he couldn't, because what would happen if he said, man, I'm really struggling with some lustful thoughts in here. You know what? Like we talk about safe spaces. Like we have to create the space and the ability for people, including celebrities and whoever, especially within the church, I think, for people to be real with what they're struggling with, you know, so that they can get the help they need while it's small before it becomes big, you know. And you know, it's a mess. I mean, we really get into celebrity culture and I start getting into conspiracy theories, we can have a lot of fun because you know, we get into that conversation. You know, there's really dark stuff I've been kind of observing, and I watch it and I'm like, you know, when I started saying that, you know, Hollywood and DC and Wall Street was full of, you know, pedophile cannibals, everybody thought I was crazy. But now
my brother talks
everybody's
about
like, wait
this.
a minute.
I'm like, I can't listen to this because I don't know. I just can't run down this rabbit hole.
Yeah, well, and it's definitely a rabbit hole, and that is actually one of the words that they use. And like I said, I mean, I try not to go too far into it because I'll get depressed and go nuts, because it's like I just want to go, you know, beat them all up. But I do think that there are some things happening there, right? And there are some messed up things, and we just allow it, and then we still worship the people. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, why is Woody Allen still making movies? Like, we all know what he did. We all know it. Why? You know, I mean, any of these guys, you know, why are they still doing things they do? You know, what's the big guy, Weinstein? Like, how long did it take anybody to finally out the guy? You know, forever. Jeffrey Epstein. Why? You know? And, you know, and again, I think the other thing we have to look out for is it's also easy for us to, in the same way that we can have that celebrity worship where we like idolize them and like only think of them like as heroes, we also can like spend too much attention on them in the wrong way too, you know? Like, dude, like how much of an impact is that person ever going to have on your life? Yeah. And this goes for politics too. I met this hippie at so I told you I lived in the middle of nowhere. There's a place called the Austin Dam which was a paper mill dam. You should look it up. It's a really cool place. Seriously, it's in Austin, Pennsylvania, which is this tiny town of about 400. It's probably less than that now, about 400 people. But like back about the turn of the last century, I wasn't alive for that. The this there was like a rainstorm and this dam just like exploded, like it just like collapsed, and like all these people were killed. But so this giant like concrete ruins are there, and it's a really cool place. And every year they would have this show, this big like hippie concert there. They call it the Dam Show, which has lots of fun puns, you know?
Yeah.
Anyway, so I met this really cool, crazy hippie guy there, and his name is Ezra Cataldo. And over the years, I've kind of had some really cool conversations with him. And I'm going to think it was probably right before the 2016 election. Social media was a wreck in like 2016. 2020 was bad. 2016 was just as bad. I mean, 2020 had other things too, but
yeah,
2016, I hit this breaking point where I'm like, why? Like, I'm so tired of all this. I'm tired of everybody hating everybody, And my crazy hippie friend got on there and he said, hey, man, I think we just need to plant our garden and raise your kids and take care of your neighbors, And this crazy, like it was this crazy, simple hippie advice that actually made more sense than anything I'd heard all year.
Yeah. Much better than whatever tax plan you were arguing over, or, foreign policy in the Middle East.
There is nothing we can do about any of that.
Yeah.
We can vote. That's it. You can choose not to shop at a company that you don't support, which I don't think we actually do enough of that. I think we actually complain and then still shop there, which I think is part of the problem we're in, but that's another story. We could talk another whole episode about some of that stuff, but
yeah.
We're going to complain about the Satan shoes that Nike puts out, but we're still going to buy Nikes. So but there was just something to that simplicity of focus on your circle. Who is in your circle? Who is in your life? Do you have friends? Take care of them. Do you have a family? Take care of them. Do you have a garden? Take care of that. And I'm like, that was awesome. And if I want more influence, if I want to have a bigger circle, I can work to build that, It just means that I have more tending to do, but I have to take care of what's directly in front of me. And, if I'm not willing to take care of a garden the size of all of public policy in Washington, D.C., then don't worry about it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I know we've been going for a while here. I want to kind of wrap up, let you get back to it. I'm sure you probably have dinner with the family and everything to get to, but what I know you have a book out, Reignite. So how about you give the people a little bit of a rundown on what that is and why they should check it out?
Yeah. So, I talked about when Manhood was born, and it was born out of my own struggle. I'll just tell you a brief story just to kind of give you a picture. I like telling stories, and if it helps paint the picture, but I was freelancing, I was struggling, I was trying to make my business work. And, I'd kind of been on like this bender where I call it a bender, but I mean, it was like, was just work. I would stay up all night until like 3-4 in the morning working, and then I would sleep in till 10, and then I'd get up and I'd work, and I wasn't even making any money because I just was doing such a poor job at it, and I wasn't showering. I wasn't taking care of myself, any of my other responsibilities. I was doing such a poor job, and I'd made a mess because we all get in those holes sometimes. We get in a fun life for mom. And my wife was like, she came upstairs, and I had like a recliner next to the bed where I would work. So like I'd come downstairs and get food and go back upstairs, and I'd eat it while I worked. And then if anybody said anything or did anything, I'd just yell at them because they were getting in the way of me trying to do what I was trying to do. And I'm just like, leave me alone. I got stuff to do. And she came upstairs and she said to me, I promised I'd love you and stay married to you forever, but you didn't have to make it so damn hard. And, for my wife, who's now a pastor and is like super sweet Sunday school teacher at the time, like that was like, she said, damn,
Yeah.
And, but it really was a wake up call for me. And that was really kind of what started my journey of saying, I need to get my life back on track where it needs to go. I've had so many men pour into my life. I've done so many things right. And here I am in the middle of this mess. It's how do I pick up from where I'm at? How do I reignite my life? And, like that's the picture, when you've got like a pile of wet wood and you're trying to burn it and it just won't burn. Mm-hmm. That's honestly what it felt like. And so I talk about in the book, I just kind of walk through that process of my life, telling stories of what it was like for me to work through that and encouraging guys to work through that and take the time to say, all right, I'm done. I don't need to stay here anymore. It's time to get it together and do something new. And, that's really what the heart of Reignite is. So it's just kind of that encouragement. And I think like, even if you're like doing well, if you're not like, oh, I'm really struggling right now. Like if you're like, no, I'm doing pretty well right now. It's actually helpful too, because we're all going to get in a funk at some point, and to have those tools before you get in the funk to be able to get yourself back out of the funk, I think is really helpful. Mm-hmm. So if it's something you're interested in, you can check it out on my website. If you go to manhood.com/reignite, or right on the front page, there's a link to it in the top corner. You can see a little video to kind of get you started. So
awesome. Well, thanks. And thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it. I definitely learned a lot and enjoyed this conversation. So I hope everyone else out there did too. But thanks for coming on, Josh.
Awesome, Nick. I appreciate it. Thank you so much, man.
Hopefully you enjoyed that interview as much as I did. I know I learned a lot, and I'll be going back and listening to it as well. So I definitely got a lot out of it. But I really think that what he's doing is important, and I just wanted to help support him. And I'm glad that he's out there helping men of all ages really lean into their manhood and to grow in manly virtue. And so definitely check out what he's doing. Check out his book at manlyhood.com/reignite. Follow him on Twitter at manlyhood.com, spelled out, the dot, so DOT.com, all spelled out. But check him out there. Links will be in there to his book and his website and his Twitter, and everything will be in the show notes, so check that out. And if you're interested and you like these sorts of conversations and you want to support the work I'm doing here at the Conversation of Our Generation, you can go to conversationofourgeneration.com/subscribe. For $5 a month, you can support my work, get access to premium content, my book sent to you, as well as the access to the Discord community. So definitely be sure to do that, or wherever you're listening or watching, on YouTube, podcasts, wherever, leave a good rating and review. That stuff really helps. And follow me on Twitter at Colin of Our Gen, or on Facebook. You can find me there, search Conversation of Our Generation to keep up with what's going on, or go to my newsletter, conversationofourgeneration.com/newsletter, to keep up as well with what's going on a weekly basis here at the Conversation of Our Generation. And so, episode of the Conversation of Our Generation, let's get the dialogue going. I'll talk to you next time.